Welcome to this explainer. Today we are diving deep into the psychology behind the absolute harshest critic you will ever face, the voice inside your own head. Look, you know the exact one I'm talking about, the voice that has had a front row seat to literally everything you've ever done. Every single mistake, every incredibly embarrassing moment, every time you put yourself out there and just fell short. It's the voice that decides to replay that one completely awkward conversation from, 5 years ago, right while you're just trying to fall asleep, or the one that convinces you that your boss's entirely neutral, standard email is actually a definitive sign that you're about to get fired.
So there is this profound truth we really need to confront about our internal voice. It was there for the whole shebang. And unlike everybody else, it never forgets. We all have this internal witness that just constantly observes and evaluates us. Most people casually call it their conscience, their gut feeling, or their inner critic. Psychologists actually call it the internal witness. But here is the massive secret that nobody tells you about this witness. Ready? The brutal verdict it constantly delivers about your worth, it is not an objective fact. Not at all. It's actually just a very old, deeply ingrained, and incredibly convincing habit. And just like any physical habit, a habit of thought is simply a path your brain has walked down so many times that it's become completely automatic.
Part 1. The origin of the voice.
Okay, let's explore exactly where this habit of self-doubt actually comes from. Because, it doesn't just arrive fully formed out of thin air. It is built layer by layer over time through a process developmental psychologists call internalization. Think back to your childhood for a second. Maybe you had a teacher who moved on just a little too quickly when you didn't quite grasp a math problem, leaving you feeling, entirely inadequate. Then, in your preteens, maybe well-meaning parents pointed out your flaws or mistakes way more frequently than they ever praised your strengths, probably hoping to prepare you for the real world, right? And later on, peers might have made you feel left out or distinctly uncool just for being yourself. These external criticisms from your past are slowly, piece by piece, assembled into your adult mind. Eventually, the people who originally shaped you, they don't even need to be in the room anymore. The external voices fade, but you absorb them. You learn to do the job for them. This new internal voice sounds exactly like you. It uses your vocabulary and weaponizes your deepest private failures against you, which is exactly why it feels so undeniably true. But, and this is absolutely crucial to remember, feeling true and being true are not the same thing.
Part 2. The science of self-doubt. Let's look at what the science actually says about this phenomenon and how it completely warps our perspective. When we compare how you see yourself against how others see you, a massive gap appears. Here's what researchers have measured repeatedly across dozens of different professional and academic studies. Let this sink in. People with chronic self-doubt do not actually perform worse than anyone else. No, seriously. They aren't making more mistakes, they aren't failing more often, and they definitely aren't achieving less than highly confident people. Objective performance metrics show they perform exactly the same. They just evaluate themselves so much more harshly than any external evidence could ever justify. Basically, their internal grading rubric is fundamentally broken, systematically creating a distorted picture of reality.
Psychologists actually have a specific clinical term for this compounding distortion. It's called negative self-referential processing. Sounds intense, right? Basically, this is the powerful tendency to filter all incoming information through a highly self-critical lens, aggressively discounting good feedback and wildly amplifying the bad. Neutral outcomes? Yeah, your brain instantly codes those as total failures. Have you ever received, say, 10 glowing compliments and one minor insignificant critique, and then spent the entire night obsessing over that single critique? Yeah, we've all been there. That is this exact process in action. You brush off a huge promotion as, oh, I was just in the right place at the right time, but you treat a minor typo in an email as undeniable proof that you are fundamentally incompetent, and this distortion compounds over time, because the worse you feel about yourself, the less you attempt, and the less you attempt, the less evidence you gather to contradict your inner critic's negative story. The doubt literally just feeds itself.
Part 3. The imposter in the room. Ever since the landmark 1978 study by psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Eames, we've learned a massive amount about how this builds into the famous imposter phenomenon. Now, you have highly likely heard the term imposter syndrome thrown around, but the hard data behind it is truly eye-opening. A 2020 review in the Journal of General Internal Medicine revealed an absolutely astonishing statistic. Up to 82% of people experience imposter feelings at some point. Only 18% do not. This proves something incredible. You see, one of the core, defining features of imposter syndrome is believing that everyone else is confident, perfectly competent, and totally certain, and that only you are faking it. But the data unequivocally says otherwise. That person sitting next to you in the meeting who looks entirely confident, perfectly articulate, and totally put together, they are with very high probability running a quiet version of the exact same doubt in their head right now.
Part 4. What self-doubt is actually doing. So the crucial point here is understanding what this voice is actually trying to accomplish when it holds you back. And here is the reframe that changes absolutely everything. The old belief tells us that doubt is an enemy trying to destroy you. So what do? We fight it, we hate it, we try our hardest to suppress it. But the new belief? Doubt is a misguided protection mechanism trying to keep you safe. Your doubt isn't malicious at all. It's just an incredibly anxious mechanism. If we look at this through the lens of evolutionary psychology, thousands of years ago, making a public mistake or looking foolish meant being ostracized and kicked out of your tribe, which literally meant death. The problem is, the human brain hasn't updated its software since then. It learned somewhere along the way that exposure leads to judgment and trying leads to failure, so it treats a mildly uncomfortable social situation or a public speaking gig with the exact same physiological urgency as life-threatening physical danger. It truly thinks it's saving your life when it's really just building you a cage.
Part 5. Becoming a fairer witness. Now, understanding this evolutionary glitch doesn't immediately silence the voice, of course, but it permanently changes your relationship to it. It allows us to seamlessly transition from fighting an enemy to gently guiding an anxious friend who means well but has a terrible read on the situation. The ultimate goal here is to become a fairer witness to yourself, someone who applies the exact same standards of evidence to self-evaluation that you would apply to evaluating literally anything else. This is profound. The goal isn't to replace self-doubt with blind confidence, because blind confidence ignores evidence, and honestly, you don't want that either. Instead, psychologist Kristen Neff's heavily replicated research shows that treating yourself with the same rigorous care you'd give a good friend builds the actual foundation for high performance, resilience, and lower anxiety. It is not about carelessly letting yourself off the hook. It's actually about higher accountability. When you stop savaging yourself for your mistakes, you remove that paralyzing fear of catastrophic failure. That frees you up to take smarter risks and perform better. Self-compassion isn't a weakness, it is the absolute bedrock of long-term performance.
Part 6. 3 things you can do, starting right now.
All right, let's put this psychology into practice. Knowing the theory is wonderful, but how do we actively change the habit? Well, here are 3 deeply actionable techniques you can use the very next time your internal witness takes the stand. First, we have to create grammatical distance by naming the voice. When self-doubt speaks, don't say, "I'm not good enough." Instead, try saying, "There's a part of me that thinks I'm not good enough." That tiny grammatical shift, it is neurologically massive. It's a technique called cognitive diffusion. It turns the thought into an object you can examine rather than a hard fact that you're trapped inside. Second, actively collect positive data. Remember, your internal witness is terrible at noticing evidence that contradicts its negative story. You have to manually intervene. Keep a brag document on your phone. Seriously, write down the compliments, the wins, the successfully completed projects. Build a more accurate file on yourself to present to the witness. And finally, act before the feeling arrives. The feeling of confidence is almost never a prerequisite for action. In study after study of behavioral activation, people act first, and the feeling of confidence follows the action. You do not wait to feel ready. Movement builds readiness.
We've covered a lot of crucial ground today in this explainer. And since this inner voice is a permanent part of how the human mind works, the most honest thing you can do is not to try and aggressively silence it, but to cross-examine it. Look at yourself the way a good, honest, caring person would look at someone they deeply believe in. Which leaves us with this final, vital question. What kind of witness will you choose to be? You have had a remarkably harsh witness for a very long time. But starting today, right now, you get to choose a fairer one. So will you make that choice?